Welcome back to the Fangirl Files podcast, agents. I'm Madison.
And I'm Sabrina, and today we're going to be discussing WandaVision because our opinions have really changed since the last time we threw it in here.
Yep. I'm not going to eat my words.
I am going to have I had my words for dinner. I had my words for dinner last week, and today they digested.
Yeah, I was definitely proven wrong, because we watched the episode 7 together at Sabrina's place, and that episode was so good. I think it's the best episode that we've seen so far.
I feel like episode 6 was even more for me.
Yeah, episode 6 was pretty good, but yeah, I'm trying to remember what happened in episode 6.
It was the Halloween episode where Quicksilver came back as Evan Peters. Sure.
Yeah, and then
Evan Peters came back as Quicksilver.
Yeah, and then Vision was trying to get, we watched Vision die.
For a third time!
The third time, yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah, that's why I'm technically not, completely trying to eat my words here, but at the same time, I'm kind of it's
getting better.
It is getting better.
I think the first episode was not good. I think we can settle on that opinion and have it be concrete. The first episode, even the second, was not that good.
My thing is, I didn't think the first 4 episodes were that good, but Sabrina disagrees.
It's not that I thought they were good. I thought the second episode was kind of bad too, but also I could see where it was building, because when they sent the helicopter through, or when she found the helicopter that Sword sent through, and it was the only thing in color, I immediately was like, that's interesting. Why is it the only thing on the screen in color?
Yeah.
It must be from somewhere that's not here. And that's why she's getting scared. And so that, for me, was like a red flag, or like a green light going off, like, this is going to get better, this has room to develop, and it was still a bad episode. The third episode was still underwhelming, but I could see the room for growth, and that's kind of what hooked me in.
Yeah, I mean, that's my thing about why I didn't really enjoy WandaVision, because it felt a lot of its purpose felt like it was saying, hey, we have a big plot twist coming, and so that made it feel like a lot of the show was being dragged out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that problem lies in the fact that Marvel was not very good at setting up the sitcom version of it. We had to sit through 60 minutes counting all 3 of those episodes, watching Wanda and Vision sort of solve trivial problems. And none of those ever really seemed to develop them in any substantial way. We had the dinner scenes, the magic scenes, and the birthing scenes. And all of these segments, it didn't really teach them any lessons, and it didn't really draw the viewer in. The only reason why I was watching in particular is because I was looking for those clues and trying to figure out the mystery portion of it.
I think for me in particular, I think it was the mystery portion of it, especially after the ending of the first episode where they switch off the TV and you're kind of like, how are they being watched? What's going on? Is this a simulation?
Yeah.
That's what kind of kept me going. But also, it was the fact that I think what Marvel was playing into was everyone, and I mean everyone on the internet, wanted more of Wanda and Vision's relationship.
Yeah.
Because the only real glimpses we got were in Civil War, when they're keeping Wanda in Stark Tower and telling her not to leave, and her and Vision are cooking in the kitchen and doing all that fun stuff, and then at the beginning of Infinity War when they're on the run.
Yeah.
And that's really all we see of their relationship until the end of Infinity War, where he dies.
Yeah.
And so everyone's like, wait, but what is that relationship like? It's so upsetting that they didn't get more time together, blah, blah, blah. And that's what I think Marvel was trying to do, because I think that was a big part of the appeal for the WandaVision show, was we get to see these characters who we loved as a pairing, and a character like Vision and an actor like Paul Bettany that everybody loved, who are now back. And I think that was a big part of the sitcom element of it, was people wanted to see, oh, look, they can have this happy life.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with that. I was wanting to see more of their relationship, and I did want Wanda to sort of go from a supporting character to someone who had a very interesting or substantial character arc. But my problem with the show in particular is the fact that it's Wanda's fantasy world, and so it didn't give their relationship a lot of room to really develop in a meaningful way, because you're watching since the problems are so trivial within the sitcom and it is like a fantasy world, like none of those problems really develop the characters or show them like working together in a way where you feel like you relate to them or where you feel connected to them. Like I feel like what they could have done is have her memories around the time of being like criminals sort of be developed further, because then like we as the viewers can like watch them go on dates or escape from law enforcement and fall in love with like Vision the same way that she did. And that way we get so invested in our love story that we don't see like the plot twist coming, and we feel the distress that she does when like bam, this is a reality she created and she has to let this person go. And we could have understood her pain on a much deeper level because we have fallen in love with Vision ourselves as the viewers.
I think that had never occurred to me as a concept for a show, but now that you say it, that would have been a much better show idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason that they did it, the sitcom the way they've done it, though, is because if you think about it, yeah, sitcoms now and TV shows now leave room for characters and relationships to grow and change and develop. But in the 1950s, relationships were very trivial, especially on TV. It was never like, oh, this big problem, like we're facing divorce, we're facing like this big enemy, especially like on a sitcom with a housewife and a husband and the kids, you know. It wasn't like this big whole problem. It was just like, what are the kooky neighbors doing this time? And I think that's what they were trying to capture is in this world, that's who they are.
Yeah.
She wanted them to have this normal life. And I don't think she necessarily wanted them to be in the 1950s and 60s when it happened. And I think due to the time period, that's why there wasn't much going on.
That might have been my problem with it, is that they were trying to capture those elements. And I think they did them pretty well because they did like the cheesy acting and like the neighbors like randomly coming in to help. But for me, I don't feel like I could have related to those scenarios. I don't feel like I could have connected to them in any way because those time periods are so different. And so I think that was just sort of where I stood with the first 3 episodes. Of course, I think it gets a lot better because the mystery element they do a fantastic job at. But that was just sort of my problems with it.
I think my problem with it was the acting is so bad, especially in 1950s and 60s sitcoms in general. It is very staged acting, or at least it seems like. And I was very like thrown by it because Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany are remarkable actors, especially in these characters that they've been playing for years.
Yeah.
Like they know these characters really well. And I was like, why does this seem so forced? Like Wanda doesn't behave in this fragile, frail, where is my husband? What is my husband doing? Kind of way. She's like, you better move out of my way or I'll take you out. Like, That's who Wanda is. And Vision is very analytical and to the point and doesn't really settle into an environment very well. Or at least that's how I see him. He's not confrontational by any means. He's much more of a pacifist. But he's not meant to be in like a working class scenario like they put him in the show. So that's what threw me for a loop. But I think they were just trying to capture like the sitcom element of it and deliberately, especially with what we know goes on later in the show, deliberately have fans be like, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Why are they behaving this way? And I think that adds to the like element of mystery of it because nobody is used to seeing Wanda Maximoff behave as frail and, breakable.
Yeah.
Nobody is used to seeing her that way. And so I think that's why the show was done in the way that it is. But I feel like you're right. If we had seen them on the run, like pre-Civil War and how Cap and Sam kind of found them, like at the beginning of Infinity War. Did I say pre-Civil War? I meant pre-Infinity. I meant pre-Infinity War, you guys. But like seeing them pre-Infinity War, falling in love, and like post-Civil War, I think that would have been a much more like productive use of time because then if you wanted Wanda and Vision to have a love story, then obviously you could get to know more about Vision because truly you don't really know a lot about Vision.
Yeah.
By the time he dies. It's basically he's introduced through Ultron. He's there during Civil War and he's there during Infinity War in brief spurts. But you don't really get attached to his character unless you've read the comic books.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, yeah. And that's not to say, like, it's bad because they didn't do that. It's just, like, as we said, it's more so the fact that, like, I don't know if we can necessarily relate to that environment or feel a connection to those characters, because a lot of like, I hate to do this comparison, but like when you think of Friends, like as a sitcom, people enjoy watching it because they feel connected to those characters. And a lot of the scenarios that they introduce, even though they are wacky, they have elements of like drawing you in, like the Thanksgiving episode to where like, you know, Monica's trying to cook a great dinner. Rachel's
she
trying
cooks
to
those 10 different kinds of mashed
the
potatoes.
3 mashed potatoes. Yeah.
Like, someone wants tots, someone wants them with lumps, someone wants them with green beans. Like, like that's a very relatable thing.
Yeah, and you have Rachel trying to get to her family, and like Chandler hates the holiday because like he has that one thing. Like when you watch that episode, you sort of are like wanting them to achieve those things. And so when that trivial problem of them getting locked out happens, you're so frustrated with that happening, because again, you just wanted them to succeed.
Right.
And at the end of the day, when they finally like realize, oh, this is like a shit situation that we're in, but we're together in this, like, I don't know how many family vacations I've had that have sort of happened in that way, like where it's like, oh, this vacation like is shit right now, but at least it's shit where we're all partaking in it. It's just, you feel connected to the characters in the story. But with WandaVision, it didn't seem that way. Like, again, we were more so looking at the clues than sitting and enjoying the podcast, and not the podcast, the episode. And that made it feel like a chore for me.
And I think that that's very much so what they were trying to do, though, because I think they meant for us to feel disconnected from Wanda and Vision, because as I said, Wanda isn't typically like this. Like you saw, and they say in the show, Monica says in the show, she could have taken down Thanos all by herself. And so I don't see Wanda as, again, this like 1950s housewife. That's not who she is. She's not meant to be prim and proper. She's meant to be Wanda. And so that's why there was a disconnect. I don't think it was deliberate. And I don't think, I mean, I do think it was deliberate, and I don't think it was like an error on the writer's part. I think they deliberately made it hard to grasp and hard to relate to, because they wanted us to see there's a pattern here. Why are they switching decades? Why does everything look different? And why are the characters confused by this? Because even Wanda, you see, like, as the series goes on, every morning she wakes up a little confused as to how everything has changed.
That's true. That's true.
And I think they've done it really well in the sense of they've had the characters deal with these problems as in like a psychological problem rather than an outward problem that they're dealing with together. Because Wanda and Vision are both dealing with separate psychological problems. With Wanda, it's the grief of losing Pietro and Vision, as well as how did I create this world and what is happening to me. And then with Vision, it's like these sudden bursts of remembering, or like seeing other people remember and being like, why is everybody acting out of character or acting like Wanda is controlling them?
Yeah, or like, what happened beforehand? How did we get here? What was my life like?
And then it's like the moral struggle.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lot of what it is for me. And that's why by episode 3, I think it was, when Monica showed up in the Hex. Was that episode 3, I think? That was when they went to the like pool club meeting with all those moms, and then like she was there. I think that was 3.
It was either 2 or 3.
I think it was 3, because at the end of 3, Monica passes out outside of the bubble. And then yeah. So I think that was for me why it wasn't a bad episode, because at the end she goes, "You had a brother. He was killed by Ultron, right?" And that kind of snaps Wanda out of it, and she's like, what the heck? And for me, it was like, oh, this is weird. Like,
yeah.
Like, clearly Wanda is locked in a bubble, and she still remembers who she is. This isn't like a separate thing, like
a simulation.
Right, it's not a simulation. Her memory hasn't been wiped. She knows who she is and what her past is, but she just doesn't want to remember.
Yeah.
And so she sends Monica back out. And I also like the motif of how everyone acts as if Wanda's the one controlling them.
Yeah.
But before I say anything about that, because I'm sure we'll get to that, like, I enjoy the fact that they are still integrating characters past into the show rather than just the movies. Because I never saw Agent Carter, like the show. So I don't know how many past characters they integrated into that, but I was not, of all people, expecting Monica Rambeau, for those of you who don't know, is Lieutenant Trouble in Captain Marvel, which is Carol's best friend, Maria, her daughter.
Mm.
I wasn't expecting her to come out of this and be kind of the head of the new S.H.I.E.L.D.
I wasn't either. I thought they were going to wait a little bit on that, but can I just say, like, seeing a dark-skinned Black woman on screen is everything. Like, I love that they're doing that, and they're finally integrating, like, not finally, because we have Black Panther, but, you know, it's good to see that they're going to continue with diversity in that direction.
And I'm sure that Shuri is going to have a, like, increasingly more important role as Phase 4 rolls out. We're on Phase 4, yeah.
I hope so.
I think we're on Phase 4. Right? It's Phase 4 now.
Yes, it's Phase 4.
Yeah. We're on Phase 4, and I hope she's going to have an increasingly more important role, especially now that T'Challa's gone, as upsetting as it is for me and all of us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's going to have a more important role, but it was really nice for me to see, because especially during Endgame, when Captain Marvel comes back to Earth to help with the war, I was wondering, when is Maria going to enter into this, and where is her daughter? Where are they? Because she wouldn't come back to Earth without seeing them. Especially because the first thing that Carol says when she gets back to Earth in Endgame is, "Where is Fury?"
Yeah.
So she's obviously looking for people from her old life. So I'm really appreciative of the fact that they somehow incorporated her and her life into the show.
Yeah, and that she has a prominent role as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I liked too. I liked the role that she's playing, because it's like, it's kind of like a woman to woman talk, to where, like, Monica, sorry, the two M names kind of trip me up. Like, Monica has experienced grief with her mother, and so she's trying to, while dealing with her own grief, sort of not project it, but like relate to Wanda and talk Wanda down.
Right.
Like, I'm happy that it's like kind of a woman to woman conversation, and they both can sort of relate in terms of the trauma that they've been through, and that is starting to at least get to Wanda, even though she says it's not. Like, the fact that Wanda's very angry about Monica bringing that up, like, it's good, in my opinion. I like those interactions.
Yeah, or like the minute that she goes, "You had a brother," and Wanda turns around and goes, "What did you say?"
Yeah.
Like, I think the fact that the grief is magnified, and that's something unrelated to what you said a little bit, but like, speaking to Elizabeth Olsen's acting, the immediate switch from a woman who has had just given birth in this scene to Wanda, who is very cognizant of her old life, and you can see the briefness of her being unhinged in that scene, and I enjoyed that. And I think, like, that's what helps them relate, because once she exits the hex and sees that, like, this is the same girl who she sent out of the bubble, and she's, you know, ready to take them down, she, like, is very, like, cognizant of that grief that is shared between them, because I think Monica goes up to her and says, "Wanda, we can help you."
Yeah. Whereas the guy, the male character, I'm forgetting his name, but the head of, like, Sword right now, he's like, "We're going to get rid of this woman. Like, we don't care what happens to her." And can I just say this too? This is kind of unrelated, but it sort of is at the same time. I wish they had a movie between Endgame and Infinity War showing the consequences of the snap, because they keep bringing it up in, like, all the Phase 4 movies by saying, like, well, you weren't there when the snap happened. I wish we would have seen the consequences of that Thanos snap, because whenever I hear about that, I don't really relate to these characters that I should relate to, because I wasn't there to see what happened during the course of the snap.
I feel like it would have been very interesting had all of the Avengers agreed to an in-between movie.
Yeah.
Between Infinity War and Endgame. Because then you would have seen their personal dealings with the snap too, because that's ultimately who you are trying to relate to. Because I believe, from what I gather from WandaVision, is that Monica snapped out of existence.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to see how Maria dealt with the snap, especially because we find out she had cancer.
Yeah.
And especially how, you know, Cap dealt with the snap, because Bucky was gone, how everyone dealt with Wanda being gone, with everyone being gone, with Vision being dead, with Peter being gone. What was Tony's life like in space for that year? Maybe not year, but you know what I mean, immediately after.
Yeah. And I think, like, again, I'm not trying to like say this is what makes it bad, but I think what they could have done is had like maybe a supervillain who lost someone that they loved, like kind of the snap and the consequences of that made them lose control. And so they're trying to get back the people back, but their methodology is wrong, and do something to where it's kind of like the Monica Wanda dynamic that we're seeing right now, to where the Avengers, having lost people as well, are starting to have to calm down this villain.
What would have been good is if Thanos was like somehow trying to bring Gamora back.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be beneficial in some way.
Yeah, but I think that would have like gotten rid of Thanos, his like villainry as a character, because he was willing to sacrifice everything. And so I feel
or
like
if Nebula was trying to bring her back, because I know that Nebula isn't like a villain per se by Endgame, but like she's still not exactly empathetic completely. Like, she still has some of what Thanos drilled into her, like, programmed into her brain, and her and Gamora aren't completely on good terms, so it would have been interesting to see her kind of spiral after finding out Gamora is dead.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Because we didn't get enough time to see that grief in Endgame, in my opinion.
And poor Peter. Like, Quill. Poor Peter Quill.
Oh, fuck. That's a controversial debate right there with Peter Quill.
No, I mean, like, after losing Gamora.
Oh, okay.
Not in general.
Yeah. What do you... Oh, God. We're not going to talk about that.
Not today.
God.
Not today.
He had some pretty bad fandom hatred after he punched Thanos and completely ruined Infinity War.
Truly.
Yeah. Okay. What were we talking about?
Well...
Oh, we were talking about the guy villain. Yeah, I wish we would have seen the consequences of the snap so we could understand his perspective. Because, like, I'm just kind of like, well, he's an asshole and I don't understand, like...
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and can we talk a little bit about what S.W.O.R.D. is and what we think S.W.O.R.D. is?
Yeah.
Because that was new to me and that was probably new to you as well. Because what I thought of it was that S.W.O.R.D. is now the new S.H.I.E.L.D. because we were discussing this before we recorded the podcast, and we were thinking that S.W.O.R.D. is the new S.H.I.E.L.D. because S.H.I.E.L.D. must have fell after everything happened with Hydra.
Yeah.
And there must be a reason that Fury is in space.
Yeah.
And it looked like he was on vacation.
I remember
in those
that.
end credits.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing in space, sir?
Hey, he deserves a vacation, though.
Director Fury?
Yes. We need you on Earth.
Come back.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I feel like if I can theorize about that for a moment, he might have had some involvement in S.W.O.R.D. Even though he did snap out of existence, I feel like he might have had some involvement in S.W.O.R.D. as S.H.I.E.L.D. was falling before that happened, and is like, okay, this is our contingency plan. So who's going to be in charge of this? Maria Rambeau. Who's going to work under her? Her daughter. Because who does he trust to take over his own job?
Yeah.
And it would only make sense that Maria would be who he trusts because Carol was his best friend.
Yeah, wow, I didn't think of that, but that's pretty good. Like
that came on the fly. That happened right now.
High five, friend. Oh my God. Yeah, but I do think like he's not. I don't know if like I think the contingency plan is there, but I think what he's doing right now is he's kind of expanding not S.H.I.E.L.D's reach. I kind of hesitate to call it S.H.I.E.L.D., but the reason he's in outer space, I think, is to try to like expand their understanding of what's actually out there. I think that was a major theory that he's just
Carol's
trying
involved?
to. Yeah, she's probably involved, I would think.
They probably communicated about it.
Yeah.
Like, he probably has, like, sent her some sort of message and is like, go to Earth.
And she did say when she came back to Earth, like, she was saying, well, sorry, I was, like, helping other civilizations or, like, you know, helping other planets.
Right, like, your planet's not the only one that exists. I can't come here immediately. I've been helping other people.
Yeah.
Other species.
So there's something going on in space there, which I'm fascinated by. I'm interested in.
And I'm interested to see how that ties into WandaVision. And we're getting kind of off of Wanda's development here, but like I'm interested to see how that ties in because you know the guy that runs S.W.O.R.D. looks at Monica and says, I know your past with Captain Marvel. And she kind of cringes away and gets quiet and is like, that aside, like, this is what I'm here to do. And there's a reason that that's a very uncomfortable topic. And for me, it's probably that she couldn't have come back, like, for them. And, like, she probably always thought that Carol was coming back. And that never happened.
Yeah, I would think that too, because she was a child when, you know, Captain Marvel went away. When you're a kid and someone leaves, you kind of have...
And she promised her she would be back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you kind of have a sore spot there and think about it.
And especially because her mother was sick. She probably expected her to come back.
Mm.
You know?
Yes.
She's probably upset and is like, well, where the hell were you when my mother was ill and I was gone for 5 years? You know what I mean? Like, why isn't she here?
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah. But I think the other thing I want to talk about is kind of how Wanda developed through the series, and she's kind of realizing, I don't understand how I'm doing this. I don't even know what I did. And I don't know how he's here right now. Like, how Vision is here. But, like, I don't want it to stop. And can we do spoilers in this podcast?
Yeah, I'd say, because we're...
Yeah,
we pretty much already did.
Yeah. Spoiler warning. But, Agnes, or Agatha. Did we know that there was something fishy about her the whole time? Did you?
I started suspecting it maybe episode 6, and episode 7, when we were watching it together, I literally looked at you and I was like, who the fuck is this woman? You were like, what do you mean? You know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like I could sort of see, like, oh, Agnes is doing something, because all throughout the seasons, sorry if I hit the microphone, I keep doing that.
You're fine. It's okay.
I could kind of tell, like, she had something to do, because she was acting really odd when you could see her talking with, like, the neighbor, and Vision comes out after, like, after Wanda gives birth, he kind of walks up to them, and Agnes is, like, whispering in the neighbor's ear. Like, you can tell she's kind of not under the influence of Wanda, and she was trying to paint Monica as the bad person, because she was like, oh, she's new in town, and, like, trying to start rumors. So she's automatically knowing that
she also tried to paint Wanda as the bad person, because you remember she walked into the house and she did something wrong, and she was like, did you want another take?
Oh, yeah.
In front of Vision.
Yeah.
And that's what turned him against her.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Yeah, but she's like, that's the thing. Like, you could tell she's trying to keep the simulation alive. And I didn't really put that together until episode 7. And I was like, oh, she has something to do with it. And then they confirmed that she was, like, Agatha Harkness. And I was like, oh, this puts another... I feel like I have to rewatch it now to see, like... because it puts another twist to it, and it feels like it's playing with my mind.
Yeah, and, like, the whole theme song at the end where it's like, it was Agatha all along.
Yeah.
Like,
I was like, wait, what? How? What is the...
What I enjoy is, ever since episode 5, they've been leaving it on, like, or episode 3, actually. They've been leaving it on a major cliffhanger.
Yeah.
One after the other after the other. So it's never suspenseless at this point.
Yeah.
And I also do like Darcy Lewis's involvement in the whole thing. If I may mention that really quick. I enjoyed the fact that she was there, because that also sets up the rest of the MCU, because we know that Jane is going to assume
Thor, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that's another thing, is, like, the fact that she's involved sets up that whole side of the universe, as well as, like, of course you would need one of the doctors to come in and kind of analyze this radio frequency that's coming from this one little tiny town that seemingly doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I like, how they're incorporating all of these characters.
I do too. Yeah. It feels like all the connections are coming together. And that's also another thing I enjoyed. Like, you could see where the clues were coming from, like why the person was in the sewer, where the drone happened to come from. Like, you can see everything sort of tying together, which is why I enjoyed the mystery portion more so than the sitcom portion.
Do we think that Wanda is under Agatha's influence?
I think in some ways, because as you said, she's kind of like, how did I get here? Like, she seems confused about certain things, but I think Wanda at the same time, maybe certain elements of her grief are being manipulated to make her, you know, not be able to see what's really going on until this episode.
I feel like the reason I'm thinking she's being manipulated is because you remember in episode 2 when the guy comes out of the sewer and she goes, no. And the entire thing rewinds. Like, I feel like instead of her being like, no, don't ruin this for me, that was no, it was almost possessed.
Yeah.
Like, probably Agnes possessing her to be like, nothing ruins this illusion.
Hmm.
And I feel like Wanda's almost under the influence, and I feel like Agatha may have even resurrected Vision herself. I don't know if he's dead anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And that's my theory about Quicksilver too, was that some outside person put him in there, because when he showed up, she seemed very confused and a bit distraught, and he was saying like, oh, my role is to like come in and sort of create chaos with the family. So I think he's trying to distract Wanda from figuring things out, and as much as he was a distraction for like Vision not to like go past the boundaries.
It's a trick of the mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what Agatha's doing to her, because it's like both done as a joke because all the fans are going to notice this, but it's also like, why do you look different?
Yeah, exactly.
What happened to your accent?
Exactly. She seems like, just as confused about his appearance.
Granted, we're all confused.
Yeah.
But like, she's even more confused. And I think that was purposeful. Am I glad Evan Peters was there? No.
Oh, God, we're going to get into it.
I like the original actor a lot more, at least for MCU purposes. Evan Peters fans, don't hurt me. I also love Evan Peters. But I think the MCU Quicksilver, whose name I need to know.
Aaron Taylor Johnson?
Okay, I'm a fan of Aaron Taylor Johnson. I like Evan Peters, but I think that like the original MCU Quicksilver was more suited for like the role of being Wanda's twin. Just because their personalities meshed more solidly. Yeah,
and it's just, I don't know. I agree with you on that. I did like the original Quicksilver actor better than Evan Peters, because it seemed like he fit the tone of Age of Ultron more.
Yeah.
Because he was like the serious guy who's been like manipulated kind of by the government, by Ultron. Like he's very angry about what's going on with his country, and like Tony Stark's or America's influence, whichever influence was happening. Sorry, it's been a while since I've seen it. But he just sort of fit the tone of the MCU more than Evan Peters, who, in my opinion, is kind of like the funny guy. Or
like, he's comic relief.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is exactly what he is in X-Men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, the last thing.
Yeah.
How do you think WandaVision ties into Multiverse of Madness? It's a hard question.
It really is. And I have yet to like completely understand the Multiverse of Madness in itself. I think somehow, because we know that normally the Fantastic Four isn't included in like the classic MCU. Like they have nothing to do with the Avengers. They have nothing to do with anyone else. Am I right about that? I feel like I'm right about that.
Not that I'm
not in the conventional sense of like the Avengers.
I think they have a movie set up or scheduled already, but
to be a part of Phase 4?
I don't know if it's Phase 4, but I think there's been rumors circulating. I'm not sure.
I think if we're gonna go off of those rumors, because we learned that Agatha Harkness, who is Agnes, we looked it up, and she does have a role in the comics, as you said, Susan Storm's and Reed's son's guardian or protector.
Yeah, and she also was involved with a lot of like Wanda's magical powers in the comics, like developing those.
Oh, so like early developing, like during the experiment, you think?
I haven't really researched that much. Maybe I'll look into it and like insert a clip of like what I found with that, but go on with your theory.
I feel like somehow they're going to tie the Fantastic Four into the MCU. And I feel like Agatha is somehow involved in that and kind of maybe trying to integrate herself into like being a trusted force for the team, I suppose, and like kind of portraying Wanda as insane.
She could, yeah.
And maybe potentially in the multiverse, Doctor Strange is like, can see all of the different possibilities, and he sees the one that is right, which is that Wanda's being manipulated. And then Agatha's trying to pull like something larger over everybody else. And I think that might be how it ties in.
Okay, I can see that.
That's a very vague theory, and I don't know if that makes any sense for those of you who know more than I do, but
it could make sense. I'm more of a DC Comics person. I will admit I don't really read a lot of Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't really know like the comic book side of it, but I'm very interested to see where it goes in terms of that. But all right, editing Madison here. I have some pretty information that I found by going down the research rabbit hole in regards to Agatha, in regards to how this connects to the multiverse of madness, and other interesting movies that might pop up, like Fantastic Four. But as stated earlier, Agatha sort of acts as Wanda's mentor, and she's also involved with a lot of magical big level threats with the Avengers. Like, she is not so much a villain, but she is kind of this kooky mother sort of figure, which I'll sort of get into. But Agatha Harkness was involved with the like Salem witch trials. She was captured and killed by being burned at the stake, and she is in her astral form when it comes to what's going on with Wanda. And Wanda, after Vision becomes dismantled and dies due to her grief, she takes remnants of the soul of the demon Mephisto, which I'll sort of get into later, and creates the twins from that. And she's not really aware of the fact that that happened. And so where Agatha sort of comes into this story is she manipulates Wanda's memories to keep the trauma and the grief from harming Wanda, while also sort of having to deal with this like embodiment of chaos. I don't necessarily think it's Mephisto, but there's like this threat that they both sort of have to come together to solve at the end of the day. And it's kind of, I since I haven't read the comics, I can't necessarily explain it even further than that, but I think that's what we're seeing here is Agatha sort of realizing that Wanda's going through grief, manipulating her mind, and trying to help Wanda become more of a developed magic user. And as I said, Agatha is a very sort of strange figure from what I've read. Like, the first thing she does when she comes back to life is she goes to a nude beach, which we can sort of see is consistent with WandaVision as a TV show, since, you know, she's always making those weird comments and, it's just sort of strange, like the kooky mother figure, as I said. But what's interesting to me is Mephisto, who is like this very big villain within the Marvel Comics. He was involved with the creation of Ghost Rider because he created that pact with Johnny Blaze. He's also stolen the souls of members of the Fantastic Four, while also apparently having a few correspondence with Doctor Strange. And what's interesting to me about his character is apparently he was created by the entity that produced the Infinity Stones. And he was also involved in trying to gather those for Thanos while having this ulterior motive of wanting the power for himself. And so, what I think we're going to see is Mephisto being set up as the next big baddie of the MCU universe. And I'm not exactly sure how this connects to the multiverse of madness. There are a few stories that I've read where he's involved with Doctor Strange. He allegedly stole Doctor Doom's mother, and he was also involved in this storyline with Doctor Strange where Hydra basically bombed Las Vegas and they lost a few citizens, and so Doctor Strange restores the lives of those people. And Mephisto, seeing this, decides to bring Doctor Strange to Hotel Inferno because he claims that the remnants of Las Vegas were basically they belonged to him. And so this causes Hotel Inferno to have an effect on the Las Vegas people. They're sort of characters are sort of turned into like these ghost rider like creatures. And so Doctor Strange sort of wants to fight Mephisto, and what he does is they play like a game of blackjack, which I think would probably be, if that storyline is taken into the MCU, I'm pretty sure it would sort of change. But Mephisto says like he'll return the souls to Las Vegas if Doctor Strange wins, and Doctor Strange, his soul would get claimed by Mephisto if Mephisto won. And Doctor Strange did win, but he cheated, and there's this whole thing where he sort of tortures Doctor Strange, and I don't know if that necessarily relates to the multiverse of madness, but I think maybe Mephisto will be like introduced within that series. So it's pretty interesting, the rabbit hole that I went down. I hope I covered everything because there was a lot, but maybe within the next episode where we, wrap up the series and talk about that,
I'll have more research to come because I'm very interested in getting back into the comics. But back to the podcast.
Me too. I'm so excited for the Multiverse of Madness because we were talking, and conceptually, I think Doctor Strange is an amazing movie.
Yes, yes.
So I'm very excited to see where it goes.
I am as well.
Yes.
He's just, I like the whole lore behind their magical system, and I like the rules that they have set up and all the different spells and artifacts, and it's fascinating, and I'm glad that they're going to sort of develop the magical.
It's very much reminiscent of, like, spirituality, like,
yeah,
how it's talked about now, because they're talking about, oh, the fifth dimension, the fourth, like, this dimension versus the fifth dimension, and that's, like, more of a cosmic thing. Mm-hmm. That's very much a spiritual thing.
Oh.
And very much like how tarot works, like, I guess from my perspective as someone who, like, reads tarot,
mm-hmm.
that's how that works. Mm-hmm. Or, like, on a level, like, you communicate with, like, your spirit guides in the fifth dimension, and, like, that's why I liked it so much, because I was like, wow, this is, like, a visual representation of the power that, like, you can supposedly have
mm-hmm.
as someone who believes in these things.
Yeah. I never thought of it like that, but
that was immediately what I thought when I watched it. And I was like, that is very cool. So, hot take. We enjoy WandaVision now.
Yeah, I enjoy it now, but I think the first few episodes were rough.
Little confusing, but we're getting there, and it's honestly just getting better.
Yeah. We'll probably do a, like, finale episode, I would say, once we finish it and we finally know.
Yeah, like, once the season's over.
On. Yeah.
And then I think if there is a season 2, maybe we could do predictions down the line.
Yeah.
Cool.
That sounds good.
All right. Well, that's our 2 cents, y'all. Follow us on socials. Follow me on Instagram at Sabrina Canoun, so Kenoun.
Follow me, Wolf Silhouettes. I'm not going to spell it.
You can find it. I'll put our names in our Instagram bio, like our handles. That might be better.
Yeah.
And then click on those. So follow us at Fangirl Files Podcast on Instagram and at Fangirl Files Pod on Twitter, even though our Twitter, like, never gets used. I'm working on it, I promise.
Give us your hot WandaVision takes, where you think this is going to go, especially if you have comic book knowledge. And yeah. Yeah, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we are going to start posting some supplemental content for you guys. Oh, yeah. It's gonna. Oh, yeah, the Kool-Aid Man. It's going to be good. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great time. Yeah. All right. Get the fuck out. Yeah. See ya.